Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Optimizing Mother podcast. Today, I'm so excited to be sitting virtually with Raizy Mendelsohn, the very first Shlucha to Wyoming. Raizy is a mother to 8 children in a place where their only friends are their siblings, and she's passionate about the chinuch of our children being our mission and to really make this mission our mission. We are their mothers, they are our children, and their chinuch is our mission. So I'm really excited to hear about this topic from you, Raizy. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, it's also good to have you on this podcast for mothers in Beis Rivka because I've heard you with the teens in Beis Rivka. You know, we bring you around. So it's really great to see this aspect. So, you know, coming with that intro, even though you do a lot of other things as well, you speak and you do emotion code. We could touch upon that later, but your primary focus is the children and is the chinuch. So I'd love to set the stage with that. Can you talk about this very important message about just centering us about this importance of our children and their chinuch is our mission?
Yeah. I just want to mention that today is the yard site of a very good friend of mine who is a Beis Rivka graduate and a very proud Beis Rivka girl, Raizel A, Toiba Raizel A, Yosef Yitzchak. So I would like to dedicate this podcast to the aliyah of her neshama.
Absolutely. Amen. Yes. She's a dear friend to many of us. So
yeah. So I think that, often we get caught up with the hum of life or the rat race in life or the what am I accomplishing? What did I, check off on my to-do list? Who am I? What did I make it out to be? And I think really to me, my neshama came down in this world to raise a Hasidic family. Now where everybody ends up, only Hashem knows. But I really feel like with everything in life, if I spent time with each of my children during the day, and that doesn't have to be tons of time, but if I gave each child some quality time, and if I was there for them in the best way possible, then I was successful. And even if I didn't teach any classes, and even if I didn't host any programs, or if I didn't, do anything on my shluchas, I feel like always focusing on that idea that the top priority that I am here for is for my children, and to raise my children enables me to feel accomplished in what people might say doing nothing in a day, because it's never nothing. And feel like not just accomplished, but feel like successful, feel like mission driven, and not just like always searching for something on the outside. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I hear you saying that. I once heard a very smart lady, aka Mrs. Raizy Mendelsohn, say that our children are not a distraction from our goal. They are our goal. And that's really what I heard you say. And I've heard this from you, and I love it because you really are living it. You're living out there in Wyoming, homeschooling some of your kids and the rest of them, online school or whatnot, but you're spending many hours a day with them, and you really are living this. But in the end of the day, you are a shlucha also. So even if your children are your top priority, can you expound a little bit? What does that mean? That's your main goal. You're doing so many other things. How is this your goal?
So a great question. And I want to touch about the first thing that you brought up, that I said that your children are not a distraction. And very often when I speak to younger, new shluchais, moving out, younger shluchais, they'll often mention I can't get anything done. My children are just not, I don't know if they say are always in the way, but that's the feeling. I can't prepare for a class because my kids are there and my kids need me and I can't. And I think that when we see our children as a distraction to our shluchas, that's what they'll be. And we won't be able to get anything done. But if we see our children as our shluchas, as shluchim themselves, as team players in what we're doing, then it enables us to include them. It enables us for them not to feel like they were a distraction. And if I tell shluchais, if it means you get nothing done a whole day and you're just with your children and you get your shluchas done at night, so that's what is needed for this point, this minute in your life, this week in your life, this day in your life. Things change. Our children grow up. Our children have different needs. But so number one is just that, idea of if we focus on our kids being the distraction, they'll be that. But if we try and focus on our children as our main priority, then that's what they'll be, and include them in what we do. So if I'm cooking dinner for my tourists, I'll have my kids help me out. Or if we're doing a mailing, my kids they love mailings. They all line up, sit at the table, and this one's doing the stamps, and this one's folding the things, and this one's stuffing the envelopes. Even down to my 3-year-olds love doing mailings. So I feel like if we, this job is actually one of our guests asked our children, at what age do you become a shliach? And one of my children piked up, as soon as we're born, we're shluchim. And the tourist sort of looked at my child and said, well, what does that mean to you? And my child responded, we go to town square and we do mivtzayim. And the tourist said, what's that? And he started explaining how, we take a lulav and esrog and we teach Jews what to do and how to do it. And when people come to our house, we help them make a bracha. So I feel like when we include our children in our shluchas, then they take ownership of it and they're excited about our successes. And I think in general, I live in a very, very small town. We focus on quality over quantity, 1,000,000%. And my daughter said she just came back to school after Lag BaOmer, and everyone was talking about how many people they had at their Lag BaOmer event. And everyone was talking, this had this many hundred and this had this. And my daughter said, we had about 50, but it was a gourmet barbecue. And it was beautiful and it was quality. And I feel like that's what we give over to our kids is what they'll have and is what they'll focus on. And they come to it with such pride and such accomplishment and such joy when they also have ownership in it.
Okay. I hear that. I hear how when you make them part of whatever it is that you're doing, then they're not separate. They're all part of the same goal. I know that you're saying this from a perspective of a shlucha. I wonder if you could translate that into, someone living in Crown Heights or an out-of-towner mother or anyone, without a specific shluchas. Do you think that our kids can be part of whatever we're busy with?
I think that, first of all, our kids could be part of a lot. And I think that sometimes there are things that our kids can't be part of, right? I teach classes and I do have to walk out the door. There are times when a teacher just has to sit and prepare. But I think that a nagging child could nag for 2 hours with the parent saying, 1 second, I'm busy. Or if a parent stops, gets down onto the level of your child, your toddler, your teen, whatever it is, and focuses on them and say, what's going on? What do you need? What's bothering you? And is there and focus on them for 10 minutes. I think that 10 minutes of undivided attention or focused attention is worth 2 hours of the half nagging attention that you can't get anything done. So sometimes there are times where we have to recognize that we can't, make our kids part of everything that we do. But so I say when we could make our kids cooking for Shabbos, preparing, even if you're a teacher and you're preparing certain things for your classroom that need to be cut and pasted, let your kids join in. There are certain things that people could include their children in. And then when they can't, I think that as long as each child has the attention that they need, and it doesn't need to be a ton, it has to be quality, then they're able to run off and go play and you could get a lot more done.
When I hear you saying about your kids being your most important mission and making that mission yours, a question that comes up for me is that what if someone feels like it's not stimulating enough? You were saying about how your accomplishments are on the side and your most important thing is to just be, and if you weren't able to do anything because you were with your kids, what if you find just being with a little kid all day boring? I mean, you love them, but it's not stimulating enough. What do you do?
So I think in general in life, you have to do things that you love and don't do things that you don't love. And so I don't like to teach. I hate teaching. I actually hate preparing for classes. But so I do homeschool a lot of my kids. I only have 2 kids right now in online school. I have one daughter who's away in high school in Phoenix, Arizona. And then I have 2 girls who are at home who are doing online school. One is going to Phoenix next year. And so from my 10-year-old and down, I did take them. They're not in online school right now, and I am learning with them. Now, some of them my husband does. Some of them I hired a private tutor. We figured out things to make it work. But like I said, I don't love teaching and I don't love preparing, but there are things that I do love and I love to learn. And so that's what I do with my kids. We learn together. So whether there's zero prep because I hate prep. I learn the Parsha with him. I have a great Parsha book and we read it together like a story. And I love going into the Midrashim and the story of the Parsha. Love it. That doesn't take me any effort. Navi, love learning Navi with my kids. We have the Little Medrash Says and we learn the Little Medrash Says. We read the Little Medrash Says together. We discuss it. I think that if you're teaching something that you hate, that will come out in what you're teaching and your students will feel that. But if you're passionate about the subject or if you're passionate about what you're doing, your students will feel that, right? Like you love to learn from a teacher that's passionate about teaching. It's not so fun to learn from a teacher that you recognize and you realize isn't loving what they're doing. So I think it's the same thing. Like I find if I don't love, I don't like cutting and pasting and doing all that with my kids. So we go to the park and we read books. I only have Jewish books at home and we don't have, a local library. So we buy lots of books, lots and lots of books. And every time I go to the kennels, I bring back Jewish books. Every time my husband goes, he brings back Jewish books. People in the community want to know what we want, what my kids want for a gift, loads and loads of books. I love reading with my kids. So I feel like finding what you do enjoy doing with your kids will bring you enjoyment while being with your kids. I love experiencing nature and I love taking trips. So we try to do that.
Tell us about your trips. Yeah. Tell me about it. Where do you go? What do you do?
Well, we do different type of trips, but every summer we try and do a road trip, whether in RV or an Airbnb. I do live in like God's paradise. I live in like one of the most, magnificent locations in the world. So our expectations are very high. So we have to, really choose greater places to go to. I live at the entrance of Yellowstone National Park. But we'll drive anywhere that's about 14 to 16 hours in each direction. And I feel like spending time with family in nature, going into the lake. Somebody bought my daughter for her bas mitzvah a paddleboard. So she brings that with us wherever we go and we stop at lakes and she gives the kids rides and stuff. Kids playing in the sand and running around and waking up in the morning and grilling and bonfiring. I feel like family time like that is just precious. So I love to do that. Now, does that work for everybody? Something different works for everybody. Sunday fun day. Every Sunday we spend time with our kids. So that means my husband does a private Sunday fun day every morning with one child. So that's like on a rotating roster. Every week he takes out another kid. Nothing fancy. Takes them with a game, ticket to ride, a deck of cards, whatever it is. Takes them to a coffee shop and they get some sort of drink, in a bottle that we could buy with a hechsher. And they sit and play a game. It doesn't matter what it is. It matters that you do it. So, and then in the afternoon, we go on a family Sunday fun day with our kids. In the winter, we take a drive to see animals. In the summer, we walk to a park. We go to the lake. It doesn't need to be anything fancy. It's that idea that this is time. None of us are on our phones and we're just spending it with our kids. So, and then we do fun other trips, but I feel like do what you love to do and then you'll love doing it.
I hear that. So in other words, there's no like preconceived image of what you have to do. Find what you love and do that anyway. You said something under your breath for a second and I wanted to stop something. You said it so interesting. You didn't say that you're homeschooling your kids 10 and under. You said they're not on the computer. Does that mean they're not on the computer all day or just that means they're not an online school?
Okay. So yeah, I love that question because I'm super passionate about this. I am a massive believer in no screens. I know it's really hard. I think like on an airplane, we bring like one iPad that we, switch around from kid to kid. And if my kids don't remember it on the airplane, we definitely don't take it out. So like a lot of the flights, we don't even use it. And I always first pull out everything else. That's like my last resort. But in general, I would say pretty much ever. Like there's no games on our phones. There's no games on, I have to make one disclaimer. My 10-year-old son is super into chess And every night he calls my brother, and I have a portal in my kitchen so that we could like FaceTime family. And he plays chess with my brother online every evening for about an hour. So aside for that, and aside for like WhatsApp calls, we do that. We WhatsApp call my parents, my in-laws, all that. So we don't have like any video subscriptions. We don't have video, we don't watch videos. We don't have any games on things. No computer games, no phone games, nothing like that. And I feel like when a child has, even if it's limited, let's say an hour a day or an hour a week of computer time, their brains it's almost like a dopamine, like it's this like addiction that their brains just want it all the time. And this is actually very interesting. My 8-year-old son, he was then 7, he was on the computer. He did online school. And what I noticed was happening was he wasn't really learning well in online school. He was like playing with everything he could somehow get his hands onto on online school. And when he was off online school, I all of a sudden heard these words from him saying, "I'm bored. I'm so bored. What's there to do? I'm bored." And I'm like, whoa, this kid was never bored before. Why is he all of a sudden bored? And that I realized that just sending him a whole day downstairs back to the classroom and a whole time when he wasn't in school being bored, I realized this was not working for us at this age. I took him off of online school, got completely rid of any computers, even though it was only for school. All of a sudden, he wasn't bored anymore. He was playing games. And, my kids they're creative. Like I came home yesterday. I go to work out every day. That's like 1 hour that I take for myself, and that helps give me sanity. And I came home and my 2 boys were out on the porch with 2 drills in their hands and this big log of wood. And they had like all these nails and they were trying to create something, and they were drilling, and they had a drill bit, and they were making holes. And I feel like the more that we sort of allow our kids to be off of screens, the more their creative energies flow, and the more independent they are, the happier they are. So that's my theory. Even if it's so little in a week, so little in a day, their minds are still like, when is my turn? When do I get it? It's this like addiction that they have. And when you fully just get rid of it from your house, it just, in my opinion, what works for me and my family is it's just, there's no addiction anymore.
So what do they do all day? Like how much of the day are they learning with you, and what are they doing the rest of the day?
So, learning takes on many different hats, right? Like learning doesn't only mean book learning. It doesn't only mean, in our math books or in our chumash and stuff like that. I feel like the learning that we do, especially younger kids, right? 7, 5, 3, 2, those ages, I feel like the less they learn in a book and the more they learn from experimentals, doing things, the more they're learning. For instance, my 5-year-old daughter made the challah for Shabbos by herself. Now, she doesn't know how to read yet, but she kept coming to me and saying, "Okay, mommy, what's the next thing in the recipe?" And I wasn't even in the same room, but I said, 6 cups of warm water. And so she brought me the measuring cup. Okay, where do I go to? 2, 3 times? Okay. So then she went back and she did 2, 3 times of the water. That got to 6, and then she brought me the eggs. "Mommy, I'm too young to check the eggs. Can you check them for me?" And I, checked the eggs for her, and she made the entire challah, like from start to finish. And I feel like, I let my kids cut with knives. Like I let my kids help make salads. I let my Baruch Hashem at 14, 13, or 12, my kids could cook a whole Shabbos, because there's a lot of learning that you do when you just cook with your kids and you include them in that process. My 14-year-old, she plans all my women's events. She designs the canvas. She goes there. She sets it up. I had to make my women's events now be women and girl events, because it was not fair for her to plan the whole thing and then have to leave because it was only women. And I couldn't bring my daughter but not have other daughters. So now I just made all my events be women and girls. And she thinks about it and she plans it, and my husband takes her to the store and she gets different flowers, and that's her strength. But each of our kids have strengths, and each of our kids have things that they're good at. And I don't like to limit learning to just being, square. So my kids, they go skiing, they go to ski school, and my kids go to sewing lessons, and my kids go to do music classes, they do singing lessons, they play piano. I try. Now, not everybody has these opportunities. People's kids are in school from 9 to 4, and then they're home, and there's not much time between dinner and bedtime, right? But I'm just answering because when you asked me, like, when are they learning? My kids are always learning. It just might not be typical what you envision learning. But they do pass their state standardized testings, and they do get into schools. So, Baruch Hashem, they're learning.
Love it. I love it. Can you give us more ideas of what they do all day? Like your typical day, where do you take them? What do you do? I know there's like big family trips, but like when you're not at like what's it called? Yellowstone Park. What's your
National Park,
average
yeah.
day? What's your average day of what you do with them? And just giving us mothers ideas. Like, what do you do with the kids?
Okay, so my day is going to look really different than a typical mother in Crown Heights. My day starts late. I do not leave my room before 9 a.m. So part of me, like, being with my kids all day, I can't start at 6 a.m. Now people are going to be like, how do you do that? Baruch Hashem, my little ones do sleep 12, 13 hours. So they go to sleep at 7 or 8. They wake up 7, 8, and they come upstairs to my room. They hang out with me in my bed. Sometimes my kid will bring up a Circle magazine or a book, and or my kids hang out. They play. Like, once my kids, my little ones get breakfast for themselves, like 5 and up. They get breakfast for themselves. They take out the cereal, they make themselves oatmeal, they get themselves breakfast, and then they play. What do they play with? Baruch Hashem, I do have a very, very full playroom. That's because my kids' only friends are themselves, are each other. And so they don't have toys in this kid's house and toys in that friend's house and different toys in that kid's house. The only house they're in is ours. So we have a lot of toys. And I do
How
have
do you
them
keep
in.
that organized? Sorry, how do you
So,
like if they're there themselves unsupervised? Like, how do they take out a million things?
So it's taken me a long time. First of all, I try and organize things in ways that my kids could put back without me being there. Meaning, all of my books, like 1,000 books, they're organized on shelves based on, who it's for, like age, and then based on size, based on shape, and then on each shelf, I put like a different color sticker and then a sticker on that shelf. So like on this shelf is all stickers with all books that have a pink sticker. So my kids just have to like look at the sticker. They know automatically which shelf it goes back into. And that way, once I set up the whole system, it's very easy for my housekeeper, for my kids, anybody from like 4 and up could, just match the sticker and put it back. And then I did that with all my games also, like board games. Like, once I lined them up all the same width and all the same length, then I just put like little like colorful stickers. So that way my kids know just where it goes back. And then I do have a almost 2-year-old who runs my house and runs my life and hangs off the chandeliers and is very sensory seeking. So is like, climbs into the sink and turns on the water and climbs into, like, he's very needs to touch and eat and taste everything. And he was just, figured out at 15 months how to climb up all the shelves, knock down every single game, climb up onto the shelf and sit there instead. So I had to come up with a new system. And I just bought on Amazon these like closets that split, 2 doors at the top, 2 doors at the bottom, and 3 shelves in each. And they have locks. And so we keep the key in the upper shelf locks because he can't reach that yet. And so my kids that are 5 and up, they could take the key, open it up, take out one toy, lock it up, and he cannot. So that has eliminated, so I have like a dollhouse, and, I try and keep like magnetized Menchie's cars. I'll keep those out so my little one could always get to something. But that way, that's eliminated huge messes from board games and, dress up and kitchen utensils and, everything that's there. So my kids they play a lot. And I find that if I take them out and we go for a walk into town, or we walk to TJ Maxx and we, pick up something, or just don't pick up something and then we walk back, or I take my kids to the park, if they've had that hour out, they're happy to come home and re-engage in toys for another hour or two. Or if I sit on the couch learning with my kids for an hour, then they're ready also to go and play with toys for another hour or two. So I feel like, no, they're not going to be playing and entertaining themselves a whole day. But if they have good pockets of attention and doing something, then they're happy to go and entertain themselves. Like a kid in a preschool wants free time. They don't want to always be in circle time and being told what to do. They love free time. So but they can't do free time a whole day. So sometimes they need to have something that's a little bit more structured. Like we'll print some pages, coloring pages, and my kids will color, or we'll bring up canvases and my kids will paint. But as long as they have some structured time, then they're happy going and, playing.
You said something in the beginning. You said that like your neshama came down to raise a Hasidic family. What does the Hasidic family look like? Like, how do you impart your values? How do you raise them, to feel the passion for Hasidishkeit?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I think because we're all trying to do the best that we can. Ultimately, we remember that each of our children are on their own journey and we're just there to support them. I think that we just have to model what we want to see. And, I don't tell my kids to daven. My kids see me davening. I don't tell my kids to do their chitas. My kids see me do my chitas. I think that we can't preach what we want to see. We have to role model what we want to see. And if we want that doesn't mean you could have such Hasidic parents who are so tzniusik and their kids are not, So I have no judgment towards any parent and the struggles because each child has their own Yetzer Haras and their own, journey in life. But I think loving what we do, if the Schwarze Seine Yid, those people that grew up always hearing the Schwarze Seine Yid. It's so difficult. Did they grow up from? No, they left Yiddishkeit, right? So if our kids, I think like in myself on my shluchas, but this could be related to anything. If my kids on my shluchas hear me saying, oh, I have to cook for another tourist. Oh, we have something else coming. Oh, our numbers weren't good. They hear the oi in our shluchas. Why will they too want to be a shlucha? They have to hear the joy on our shluchas. Now, that doesn't mean it's always joyful. And we could vent, but vent to a friend, right? Like in our own lives, in our own shluchas, in our own everything, our kids have to hear the joy. I love Shabbos. I love Shabbos. I love Yom Tov. I love 3-day Yom Tovs. Like I would do a 5-day.
What if you don't? Like, what if you don't?
You know what? It's a very good question. What if you don't? I made a decision when I got married and I said, I am going to love the mitzvah of mikvah. I want to love it. And so I put steps into place to make it be able to be a mitzvah that I love. Now, let me tell you something. My mikvah is a 10-hour round trip drive. Okay. I made this decision when I lived in Crown Heights and there was a mikvah down the block. I take a flight every month. It's over $1,000. I'm out of the house for 12 hours, and I made a conscious decision that I want this mitzvah to be a mitzvah that I love, which means I'm going to put things into place to enable myself to love it. Doesn't mean it's not going to be hard. Doesn't mean there's challenges. But now I go to the mikvah, I get on an airplane, I take a book with me. I'm like, okay, great, mini vacation, 12 hours. I'm not doing anything. That's became my focus instead of like, oh my gosh, I have to cancel everything that I have to do. I have to hire a babysitter. I have to figure out what's going on just so I could schlep to the mikvah. And I'm giving the idea of mikvah just because that was like something that I so consciously decided. But I think with everything, like if you hate Shabbos, figure out why do you hate Shabbos? What is it about Shabbos that you hate? And what could you put into place to enable you to love it? Get a good extra treat that you like to eat. Not just for your kid's Shabbos party, for yourself. Get yourself a good book that you want to read. You know what? If you have to get yourself a book every week and it's $30 a week, instead of getting yourself flowers or instead of getting yourself a mat, do what it takes. You know what I'm saying? Like, make it something that you love. So I think with everything in life, we could be resentful about things. Look, I live in a hole in the wall, right? Like I live in It's called Jackson Hole. It's a hole. It's amongst mountains. I came here. It was hard to breathe. We're high altitude. I have zero from social life. My closest from neighbor is 4.5 hours away. Shomer shop is anything. My closest pizza shop is 10 hours away. And my kids don't have friends. And that could be like the miskinim. I feel bad. But like we always talk about how, like, if something happens, like my kids get a photography lesson because a lady in my community is teaching, is a photographer and will teach them. I'll be like, isn't it amazing? If you didn't live on Shluchas in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, you would never learn photography. Isn't this cool? Or like my son goes skiing every afternoon in the winter. And I'm like, if you weren't on Shluchas in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, you would never get to ski. We're so lucky. And I hear my kids say like, the weather is there's no pollution. We're so lucky. We live in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, where the air is so clean. Like this becomes what they see too. And I'm just giving examples from my location just because that's where I live. And if you live in Crown Heights or in LA or Connecticut or whatever it is, there's things that make your place special, things that make your life special. Maybe it's that you have a best friend that lives down the block. Maybe it's that you could order in dinner once a week. Maybe it's that you send your kids to school every day and you're able to, like not be homeschooling your kids, whatever it is. We all have things in our lives that make it special and amazing and joyful. And the question just is, what do we put our focus on? And whatever we put our focus on, that's what we'll see even more.
Wow. I love it. Do you have any special like family customs that you guys do together, like family traditions, I would say? Like what do you guys do as a family? I know you do travel. You spoke about a lot of things.
We do dinner every night. That's like sacred. We have a family dinner, no phones at the dinner table. We set the table. We don't even
Set the
use
table like with real dishes?
Yeah, not China, not like my Shabbos China, but my weekday dishes. Yeah, we set the table with real dishes. And I always have like a protein, a vegetable, a carb aside, like, proper dinner. And we learn like Hayam Yayim Sefer Mitzvahs together as a family. And we talk. And we ask the kids about their day. And my husband shares what interesting things went on in his day, or I share what interesting things. It's just like natural, but it's sacred because it's a time where we spend it together. Everyone, we don't do things formal. It's not like we go around. Sometimes in my life, I did do things formal. Like we went around the table and everybody shared what they were appreciative about, or, whatever it was, whatever tradition we did at the time. But in general, it's just time to be together. Anybody could share something that they learned. Anybody could share something that, they want to talk about. So I think that's one. My husband puts my little kids to sleep at night and he watches the Good Night Gem video. If you don't watch it, I highly recommend it. I think it's so brilliant that they came up with this incentive that if you watch it 10 nights, you get to say good night to the world. And
you want to share? How could people find it? Can you share that to listeners?
It's the Good Night by Gem. It comes out every night from 5 to 10 p.m. So if you miss it, you miss it. You can't watch the last night's one. And there's this teacher, Mor Bracha. I have no idea who she is. She narrates it and she explains to the kids what's going on. And my kids from ages 8 down to 2 love watching it.
Where do you find it? How do you find it?
It's so there's a WhatsApp that it could come to you every night, the link, but it sends you to gem.tv. I think it is. If you go to gem.tv or gemtv.org or gemtv.com, you'll see it'll pop up, Good Night, My Child, and you sign in. And then every night, once you watch, it's 2 minutes. And the whole thing is 2 minutes. It's a Rebbe video with Bracha explaining what's going on, whether it's a niggin of the day, whether it's a sicha, but it's really, really, really kids, focused. And then every night there's 2 families from anywhere in the world that their kids get to wish a good night to everyone. And it's always a highlight for the kids to see who. So the kids love watching, like where kids come from, and they dreamed about what they're going to say when it's their night. And my kids finally won the raffle, and there was such excitement. So that's like a great thing. My husband puts the kids to sleep. I put my baby to sleep, and then he puts the next 3. And then my older ones go to sleep later. But so that's just another little sort of tradition that we have at night. Also, that enables each of my kids, the little ones, to get that attention from my husband, focus, a Shema with them, watches a video with them. Each one separately watches the video. And then they go cherries with them for like 5, maybe 10 minutes. And they just share about their day or if something's on their mind.
I love that idea of the gem, and everything that you shared about supper, phone away, etc. And I love it. It's beautiful. On a practical note, though, like you're literally home all day homeschooling 8 kids, and you're having guests. Like, what do you do? Like, do you ever get overwhelmed? Like, does it ever get like chaotic, like kids and noise or mess? Like, what do you do when it gets like too much a little bit?
So that's a great question. And it will. Every home will get at times become chaotic. Um, so I strongly believe we can't do everything 100%. You can't like also be a mother, also have a full-time job, also be the housekeeper and give it all 100%. Nothing is going to be 100%. Something's going to go. And there's all these amazing stories of people going by the Rebbe and saying like, could I, I'm thinking of not teaching as much or not doing this because it's too overwhelming. And the Rebbe said, hire more help, and don't look in the corners. Like it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be the way you would do it. Hire more help. And we have to, I think, like focus and remember that there's certain things that only we could do. And there's things that anyone could do. So I don't need to be the one cleaning my bathrooms. It doesn't need to be me. I could have any non-Jew off the street cleaning my bathrooms and making the beds and doing the laundry. So I think that first of all, just, taking the housekeeping off of my plate enables me to enjoy being with my kids and not stress over the mess that they're going to make. Because I think that's a big one. Like if you have to clean every mess, then that could be stressful. But if you know that you don't have to be the one cleaning it, then you could enjoy it with that time with your child. And now, yes, finances are a big question, but I really truly believe, like when the Rebbe said to people, hire more help and the Eibishter will provide, hire more help and the Eibishter will provide. And I'll notice like weeks that my housekeeper doesn't show up, there's not any extra money in the account because it didn't go to the housekeeper. Like Hashem sends us what we need, and I need house help. And then I say really anything that you could delegate. So my husband and I a while ago had a conversation with my husband's mashpia. We had something that we wanted to discuss as a couple. So we called his mashpia. And at one point in the conversation, his mashpia said to me, Raizy, what overwhelms you? So I said 4 to 6 p.m. and Friday afternoons. And he said, okay, why does that overwhelm you? And I said, well, I've been homeschooling all my little kids all day. My older kids just finished on the computer. They need attention. Baths need to happen and dinner needs to be made. And that could get stressful. And without batting an eyelash, he was like, why are you making dinner? And I sort of laughed like, okay, he's a man. He doesn't get this stuff. But I was like, what do you mean? Why am I making dinner? Because we need to eat. And he said, why do you need to be the one to make dinner? Hire someone to make dinner. And the idea sounded like so foreign to me. And I didn't even know how to go about it. But he was like, hire another housekeeper that knows how to cook and teach her your recipes and have her make dinner. And then a week later, he sent me and my husband a joint message. And he wrote in it, Raizy, I hope you're keeping your part of the deal. And I was like, ooh, boy, I got to do this. So I called up an old housekeeper of mine who was amazing in the kitchen, but was past her days of cleaning. And I asked her if she would come from 4 to 6 every day. And it's been life-changing. So now my kids come up at 4 o'clock. Like I prepare, like I take out of the fridge, freezer, whatever it is that I need. And then my kids come up at 4 o'clock and my phone is away and I'm just focused on them, whatever they want to talk about, whether it's if we play a game or talk about what's going on or bathe my kids or go for a walk or go for a bike ride. I crack the eggs. I turn on the stove. I laugh because I say she makes all my recipes, but better. Like I used to make tacos. She makes like homemade tortillas, and she makes the different sauces and cuts up the vegetables, and she puts pride into it because she's not like just rushing with 1,000 things to do. She's hired for 2 hours to do this. And then I hired her on Friday to come cook for Shabbos. And I realized the brilliance of my husband's mashpia because, first of all, I'm going to put a plug. Like, if anyone doesn't have a mashpia, it is the biggest gift you could ever give yourself. Like, for yourself, for your husband, for your marriage, for your sanity, for everything is like if you don't have it because like, oh, I don't know who to ask, like get off the ego train. Like there is somebody, because it doesn't matter. The Rebbe like said that I will give the answers through the mashpia. So like just, and I know like when I ask my mashpia something similar to when I ask my Rav something, then it's off my shoulders. Like came from the Hira of the mashpia, it came from the Rebbe. It came from the Rav, it came from halacha. That's it. It doesn't matter what my own thoughts are about it. That is sacred now. So just totally side note, because I feel like it is the most liberating thing in the world is having a Rav and having a mashpia and having a Rav that you could call. Like I have a most amazing Rav and my kids call him. Like my kids have a shayla. I'm like, here, call the Rav. And my kids are so comfortable with it that when my daughter's in high school, she says, if there's ever a shayla, the dorm counselors are like, Kyla, could you call the Rav for us? And she calls the Rav for them because you have to be comfortable from a young age. And guess what? If you don't feel comfortable with your Rav, find another Rav. If you don't feel comfortable with your mashpia, find another mashpia. You're not married to them. You could switch. If it's not working out and you feel like your Rav doesn't have time and you feel like you're on a treadmill trying to get through your question, maybe that's not the right Rav for you, And the same thing with your mashpia. If you can never reach her and she's so out of touch, and find somebody new. That's fine. Okay, back to what I was saying is that Fridays used to be like I would come into Shabbos like a shmata. I was cooking an entire day with my kids, not giving them adequate attention, even though like I would stop and get down on their level and see what they need. But like there was like the stress of having 100 people for dinner or having 30 people for dinner, and now I have somebody that comes, she cooks the entire day. She makes all my recipes. I'm still in the kitchen. I'm still checking all the lettuce and I'm still making the challah, unless my 5-year-old takes that over for good. And I'm still busy, but I actually started going to work out also on Fridays and just leaving the house for an hour, knowing that Shabbos is going to happen. She makes my dips and she makes my recipes. And I like different food all the time. I don't like the same menu. So I'll be like, she'll clean the chicken and I'll dress it differently every week. Or I'll take out different vegetables and be like, this is how this gets cut. This is what you do with this. This is what you do with this. And now I walk into Shabbos like a queen, happy to welcome my guests instead of resentful.
Wow, it's amazing. I have to say that a year or two ago, I think it's about 2 years ago that I hired an 8th grader and this year a 7th grader sometimes to come help me Friday afternoon. And I totally get what you mean. It was like a game changer. And, I paid her. And yeah, I feel spoiled. Not
I love that you mentioned that because it doesn't have to be someone official. It doesn't need to be a chef. It doesn't need to be an adult. Like just having somebody, a little girl who's like happy to get paid a little bit for some time, and whether she's watching your kids or whether she's helping chop the food, like love that you thought.
I also love having company in my kitchen because I have 4 boys and I'm like, yay, another girl. Like I love it. So I think what I'm saying is not everyone can necessarily have a chef show up for 2 hours every day, but I think that the message is relevant in the sense of like, what there are things that only I could do and there are things that can be delegated. So in any way that you have the ability to delegate something physical, to that extent, the main thing that our kids need from us that no one else could give them is that time, that love, that focused attention.
Yes. And if you love cooking, that might not be the area where you hire somebody.
Right.
Right. Like hire what makes you crazy. The thing that makes you overwhelmed. And you know what? For some parents, it's their kids. And if a parent feels super overwhelmed and they'd rather just be in the kitchen cooking, hire a girl to come to, give your kids attention for 2 hours. And then you'll be able to greet them with a smile. You'll be able to greet them with your delicious food. It doesn't have to be, I would rather spend time with my kids and then cook or clean. But for somebody else, they'd much rather cook or clean. So find the area that overwhelms you and see what you could do to delegate, remembering that we're not superhumans. We can't do everything.
Yeah, but if you're outsourcing childcare, then how do you still keep the focus of like their most important mission?
Because you don't have to be with them 24 hours a day to give them the love, the attention that they need. If they did, you wouldn't send them to school, right? Because their teacher's doing that. But that's not what it's about. It's about that the times that we're with our children should be the most focused, should be that they should feel that their emotional needs are met, their physical needs are met. They should feel safe. They should feel loved. That doesn't mean that you need to be their full-time entertainer, babysitter, and best friend.
Got it. I love that. So no need to like guilt ourselves. Like the main thing is they're our priority, they're our focus, like you said, quality over quantity. I wanted to ask you one last
Wait, can I say
question.
something? Guilt
Sure.
is the Yetzer Hara. Guilt is the Yetzer Hara. You just said we don't need to guilt ourselves. Guilt is the Yetzer Hara. There's nothing healthy that comes from feeling guilty. So if you're feeling guilty about something, get to the bottom of it. Figure out, why am I feeling this guilt? Is there something that you could do to change that? Then change it. If there's nothing you could do to change it, then get rid of the guilt. Then that's what it is, and that's what has to be done, right? Like anytime you're feeling guilt will just bog you down. Guilt will just make you feel bad. It won't make you feel happy. It won't make you feel joyful. It won't help you in any way. So like dissect the guilt. Ask the guilt where it comes from, what it's about, why it's there, what it's needed for, and then get rid of it.
And then bye.
Gone.
Love it. Love it.
And worry. By the way, worry is the other one. Worry is not present. Worry is futuristic, right? We don't worry about the present. We deal with the present. We worry about the future. Like the opposite of worry is Emunah and Bitachon, right? Like if we're worrying about the future, how are we going to afford something? Okay, replace it with Bitachon. Hashem is going to help us. We have to do what we can, make the keli. If we're worrying about how our child will turn out, okay, right now, what could I do in this moment? Like worry is a futuristic Yetzer Hara, and guilt is like a present Yetzer Hara. So both of them have to be gone.
Bye. I love it. I love it. These are great reminders. Even when you hear it, it's like you hear it in a different way, in a different tone, in a different, as a reminder to just get the energy to be present. I wanted to ask you one last question that I feel like is a little off script, but because I introduced you and like threw it in, I just want to, I feel like I owe it to our listeners to ask you about it. I didn't know till recently that you do emotion code. I'm curious, like, how'd you get into it and what do you find so helpful about it?
Okay, so such a good question because it doesn't seem like my type because I'm like a super grounded person, not like energy related sort of person. But I have a child that about 3-4 years ago was really, really struggling with like violence and would just be like totally like become aggressive and would go into these modes where like not even recognize their own body. And we tried typical therapy and the child told the therapist to jump out the window. And that was not working at all. Like we were going nowhere. And we tried, all different things. And then a friend of mine, another Shlucha, recommended Maishi Weinbaum from California, who is an emotion code practitioner. And my husband knew Maishi growing up. And so he reached out to him. And we were like, look, we'll try 3 sessions and let's see, like, so not our style, so not what, what we know of, but it's come so highly recommended and rated and we're at our wit's end. And we spoke to parenting guides and we spoke to so many different people to try and help us with this child. And we were just like, look, we'll try this out too. And we met with Maishi, I think 3-4 times, and our kid was a different kid. Just calm, no longer possessed, didn't have violent issues, was able to go to camp that summer, like totally different. And I was like, wow, this was amazing. And I like understood a little bit more about it. And then I really wanted to use it for another child of mine. But Maishi is excellent and very, very well sought after and is very busy and is hard to get into. And then I was listening to a podcast from the Inside Out by Ida Schottenstein and Rivka Krinsky. And they interviewed Maishi Weinbaum. And in it, at the beginning, Rivka started with saying like, oh, my daughter learned it. And I was like, what? Other people could learn this? No way. Like, this isn't just like this Maishi Weinbaum specialty. Like, no way. So I got the book and I started learning all about it, the motion code and the body code. And then I did like 750 clinical hours of practice. And then I certified. And it's been an incredible journey. I have clients every night from 7:30 to 10:30 p.m. And Baruch Hashem, I feel like it's an honor to be part of their healing journey because it is just a remarkable, not about bandaging up the symptoms and like putting blocks on the symptoms. It's not about figuring out how to deal with your anger, how to deal with your anxiety, or how to deal with your bad back. It's about releasing the anxiety, releasing the anger, and releasing whatever is causing the pain in your back. And
so where does the Vaida come in? Like you mentioned before, Bitachon over worry. Like where does the Vaida over your anger come in if you're just releasing this magically in emotion code?
So it's a good question. First of all, I wouldn't tell you that my clients just like sit back and do nothing. It's very deep work. Like I'll bring up what through their body, right? It's all muscle testing. So you go into their subconscious mind through muscle testing. You basically get a strong muscle for a yes, a weak muscle for a no. You tap into the subconscious mind, which is 99% of our mind is our subconscious, right? Like the 1% of our conscious mind is what controls, the thoughts that we think about and our feelings that we feel and all of our conscious behaviors in our conscious mind. The subconscious mind, which is really like the whole iceberg underneath the water, 99%, which is controlling our blood flow and our antibodies that are working and our leg that wants to move, that all the muscles that are taken for our leg to move back and forth, as well as every emotion that we felt in our lives, every trauma that we went through, every inherited emotion and any inherited trauma that we inherited from our parents, our grandparents, whatever it is. So I tap into their subconscious mind and figure out what it is, what emotion is that's bothering them. So I'm going to give you an example, okay, of where a Vaida could come in. And there's so many different types of a Vaida and different examples, but I was working on a woman who had a lot of pressure on her chest. So I went in to figure out what emotions there were, what was bothering her, and it came out like a male in her community. And she started like guessing. And then when she guessed the right name, I got a strong yes for that. And so she sort of sighed and she said to me, about 10 years ago, my husband lent this man a tremendous amount of money and he had promised to pay it off within 3 years and he didn't pay it up. And I said to her, okay, like, that's hard, right? Like you feel like you didn't get that money back and you're carrying a lot of the stress that you need these finances, but you don't have it. So then I asked her, now this is a frum woman, a Lubavitcher. And so I asked her, I said, do you fully believe that financially you have or will have everything that you're meant to have, whether it comes through this man or it comes through somewhere else? Like, do you believe that you will have exactly what you're meant to have? And she thought about it. And she said, yeah, I guess I believe. And I said, and like, do you believe that if this money's meant to come to you, Hashem will send it to you through any different avenue, through any avenue, even if it's not through this man? Do you believe that? And she thought about it and she said, yes. And so then I said to her, you've carried this pain with you for 10 years and you've carried the physical pain with you. I said to her, do you want to continue the next 40, 50, 60 years of your life still carrying this burden on you? Or are you willing, or are you able to forgive, knowing that whatever you're meant to have will come from the Eibishter? Now, if I started the conversation and I said, are you willing to forgive this man? There was no way, right? But when she realized that the pressure she was feeling on her chest was from all of this anxiety or whatever it was, from this loan that was left out, and she saw how difficult it was on her. And then she got the question in that way, like, do you want to carry this burden? Okay, you're not going to see the money. Oh, I asked her first, do you believe you will ever see this money again? And she said, no, probably not. So I said, okay, so knowing that you'll never get this money again, do you also want to carry this, $50,000 that you lent them that you'll never get again? Do you also want to carry the stress and burden of it on your chest for the rest of your life? Or do you want to let that go? And at that point, she was like, no, I don't also want to carry the stress. So I said, so are you willing, knowing that Hashem will give you whatever you're meant to get, are you willing to forgive this person for the loan that you lent them, that they didn't repay you? And it took like real avaida, but she was able to get to the place of saying, yes, I want to forgive them. And so then I worked on releasing those emotions while she worked on forgiving that loan. So there was a lot of deep work that went in her part. And I find that with everything, like when I bring up certain emotions that somebody's feeling and it's related to something certain, I always say to my client, like, while we're working on releasing these, if it's in your heart, and it's not always, because sometimes you're not ready for this, but if it's in your heart to also verbalize to forgive this person, do that at the same time, because you'll also feel freer, like not just from the emotions. So I think that there's a lot of deep work. And sometimes if it's not deep work, like, do you really have to live with back pain? No. Like, does that have to be your Avaida? No. If you're free of the back pain or free of migraines, right? Like if I have a client suffering 2 years from migraines on medication, taking a shot every month to get rid of her migraine, plus topping it up every 4 or 5 times a month, topping it up with other medication for 2 years straight. And after 4 sessions, she hasn't taken a single medication and hasn't had a single migraine. Like, she could then serve Hashem with more joy. So does the actual work have to be your Avaida? I think part of it is a lot of deep work. And a lot of my clients that are going through really deep things, it's deep emotional work. But other people that are just dealing with, a bladder that's not aligned, that's causing them to wake up 3 times a night. No, if they sleep better, they'll be able to be better mothers. Like, that doesn't need to be their Avaida.
Wow, that was so interesting. Thank you. Okay, can you tie this all up with a bow for our listeners? Like, what's, if you had one thing, if you had to sum up, what could you tell mothers that are raising the next generation of mothers? What would you tell us all?
I would say try and find the joy in everything that you do, because simcha parts geder. And when we're able to find the joy in spending time with our kids, if we're able to find the joy on our shluchas, if we're able to find the joy in our careers and in our work and in our relationships with our husbands, then everything that we do will be a tefach higher. Everything we do will be more accomplished, felt more. Everything works out better when you're able to do it by tapping into real inner joy, not like a slogan, but like tapping into really inner joy, getting rid of the stress of worrying about the future, right? Focusing on the moment. Even focusing on the moment. I know we didn't discuss this earlier, but like, I find, sometimes you could be focused on like, I need to get Shabbos on the, table, and your kid needs you that second. Like, stop a second, like go down onto your knees, look them in the eye, see what they need, give them a hug, say, I love you. And then you could continue what you need to do, right? Like, if we're just live in the moment a little bit more and with a little bit more joy, if we're able to live in the moment without the guilt and without the worry about the future, the stress about the future, do what we can do, what you could do at this moment. I was once asked about stress, right? Like, I used to be very stressed out about the future. So shortly after we moved out on Shluchas, I was pregnant with my second. I had 1 baby, and I realized that I'd be making Pesach for the first time. And I was so stressed out. I was like so stressed out. And one day my mother-in-law called me and she said, hi, Raizy, how are you? And I said, Ima, I'm so stressed. She said, what's wrong? I said, I'm making Pesach for the first time. She said, okay, is there anything you could do about it now? And I said, now? No, it's only Tishrei. And she said to me something that was like so mind-changing and powerful. She said, if there's nothing you could do about it now, why stress? And I took those words like so much to heart. And I really live my life by that. Like, if there's something I can do right now, I'm going to do it. And if there's nothing I could do right now, then I'm not going to stress about it. And that's with everything. Like, I don't need to stress about a Yom Tov coming up. I don't need to stress about what work needs to be done. If at this moment I can't get any of that work done, I also don't need to stress about what can't get done. And at any moment that I could get something done, then that has to be my focus on getting whatever I can done. And I feel like if we take out our stress about the future and we replace it with Bitachon and Emunah, that Hashem will give us the strength that we need. Hashem will give us the help that we need. We'll put into plan the ability to the help that we need. Then it'll work out at that point. Why should we waste all this extra time, months, stressing about it? So I think that ties back into like living with joy. If we're not stressed about the future and we're not like, if we're stressed about our finances, okay, like let's sit down and talk about it. Like what's going on with our finances? Where could we implement? What could we cut? What changes could be made? Make those changes, implement what needs to be changed. And then that's it. Don't stress about it because what's that going to help? And if there's nothing you could do right now about your finances, then have a emunah that the Eibishter is going to give you what you need. Right?
Love it. It's an amazing takeaway. Wow, this was amazing. Thank you so much, Raizy, for all your time and your wisdom and your contagious joy. Like, I feel like just, it came through the wires. So I'm so grateful. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Please share this episode. Subscribe to the Optimizing Mother podcast. I hope you enjoy it as much as I just did. And I wish us all a lot of hatzlacha in bringing the joy into our parenting. Thank you. Thank you, Raizy.
Thank you for having me. It was fun.